Welcome to the Confidence Through Health podcast. My name is Jerry Snyder. As a health, wellness, and sports performance coach, my goal each week is to bring you experts to help you take control of your health and build your self-confidence. Thanks for including me today on your journey to better health. I want to say thank you to Social Media Cowboys for sponsoring this week's episode of the Confidence Through Health podcast. If you need help with a website, if you need social media needs for your business, if you need help with AdWords, SEO, all those things that you know you should be doing, but you are too busy to do or you're too confused about, they are the experts that you need in your corner. If you're interested in launching a podcast, such as mine, they help me edit my podcast and do a fantastic job making sure that all of the technical side of it is handled and we launch a nice, neat, edited podcast episode each week. So I want to thank Social Media Cowboys for their continued sponsorship of the Confidence Through Health podcast. You can find them at socialmediacowboys.com, or you can find them as well with other sponsors at confidencethroughhealth.com. So Pete, I want to thank you for being a guest on the Confidence Through Health podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jerry. I appreciate being here.
And I think when it comes to health, a lot of times people that are changing the world or changing people's world are doing it because they had their own experience and then they've learned through it and they've found some path or system or something that's made it easier. And so they want to share that with everybody. And your story is very much like that. And what is it though, before we get into what you're doing, you were diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. Like, what about the way you handled that and went through it allowed you to still be here when so many people, hear that and just fade away?
Sure. Yeah. Before I got diagnosed, I was in my mid-30s, and by all the metrics that society gauges success, I was successful. I was running a successful consulting firm. I've started 6 companies in my life, so I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Very athletic and fit. I hike in the mountains. I rock climb. I'm a mountaineer. I ski. Do all the outdoorsy stuff that folks in Boulder, Colorado like to do.
Yeah.
I had a partner, I had friends, an active social life. And so if you looked at my life from the outside, it looked really good. And that's how I felt about it as well at that time.
Yeah.
And then I started feeling sick. And at first it manifested as just fatigue and kind of depression. And then night sweats started happening. And then I started getting chest pain and then a cough. And it was during the time of COVID. So I saw 3 or 4 doctors, and one said, "Oh, it's vitamin D deficiency." Another said it's probably long COVID, and we just have to wait this out. And so finally, I went into a doctor, and I insisted on getting a chest X-ray. And lo and behold, they found a 7-inch tumor pressing up against my lungs, my heart. It was in the mediastinal region of the chest, so it was halfway wrapped around my esophagus, and that's what was constricting my breathing and swallowing.
Yeah.
So it answered a lot of questions, but when you get that diagnosis, it basically shatters every aspect of your life, immediately. Most people don't expect to get a cancer diagnosis and don't prepare for it, and they don't have a plan or a roadmap for it, even though, there's been statistics that have come out saying over 50% of Americans will get cancer at some point in their life.
Right.
So it's not uncommon, unfortunately, but we still don't prepare for a health crisis,
Right.
And we're humans, right? So we're born, we live, and we die. We can expect to have a health crisis at some point, but we certainly don't want to think about it and prepare for it. And in the beginning, I was just thrust into the medical system, right? Appointments, labs, tests, surgery. I went straight into some really heavy duty chemo, which in the patient community is nicknamed Red Death because it's this red liquid that comes through a tube and you urinate red for like a week afterwards. And that was partially effective, but it shrank the tumor down to a smaller size, which was then stable. Many of my symptoms, went away. but those first few weeks are just chaos. It's, you have, your whole life turns upside down. You're overwhelmed, you're scared, you're uncertain, you don't have guidance, and unfortunately, most cancer patients are left with completely inadequate support and guidance on how to proceed. We're pushed into the Western medical conventional system. So we have guidance on like the conventional medical treatment path. But outside of that, maybe you'll get a social worker that will help you. But they're so overburdened with a huge client load that they can hardly give any clients the attention they really need. So I went into that system as a typical patient. My dad was a rheumatologist. My mom ran clinical trials for rheumatology medications for FDA approval. So I grew up in a family where science was God, essentially, and especially Western medicine could heal any problem, right? So I had a lot of faith in the Western medical system based on my upbringing and kind of my existing beliefs at the time. And I went through chemotherapy. That didn't work. So they tried radiation, 28 rounds of radiation. That didn't work. More chemo. That didn't work. And then they pushed me into this incredibly impactful immunotherapy called CAR-T, which completely floored me. I mean, they give you chemotherapy right before you do this treatment just to wipe out your immune system. So they can inject these like superhuman bioengineered cells into your body that attack the cancer, but your own immune system will start attacking those cells. And it's just, it's really scary. And patients aren't asking, okay, 6 steps ahead, what am I going to be doing in 2 months? We're just asking, am I going to live through this? Am I going to survive? Am I doing the right thing? Right? Do I need a second opinion? Is my oncologist accurate in his diagnosis? And so we're not really able to plan ahead just because of the nature of the chaos, and there's an overwhelming amount of information. Like everyone and their grandma and dog will tell you a miracle cure, right? Like, oh, my cousin drank asparagus juice for 12 months, and ate pine cone hearts, that cured him. There's so many wild, wild cures going around, and some of them do work, but it's impossible to distinguish between what's accurate information and what's not, right? Even from your oncologist. The pivot, when I think my story changed, is after a year and a half of these very intense treatments. It was the dark night of my soul, and nothing worked. I was out of options, and I was pretty much expecting to go out in an opiate haze. That's my belief at that time, was cancer is going to kill me. And my only option was to explore clinical trials, which can be very effective, and I was planning to do that. But then my couples therapist, my wife and I had a couples therapist, and she mentioned kind of offhand, oh, I have another client that went to this mind, body, spirit healing center in San Diego called the Optimum Health Institute. And, I kind of pulled a Hail Mary, and I was like, I don't understand holistic medicine. I don't really believe in it. I literally had oncologists tell me to my face, like, anyone comes up and tries to sell you some holistic alternative cure, it's snake oil. Like broad, categorization of all alternative and complementary health approaches. And I had ingested that information and believed it. But at this point, I was like, I have nothing to lose. I'm going to die anyways. Might as well try something. And I'll be damned if after about 6 weeks of really investing in alternative and holistic approaches, I was symptom free. All my pain was gone. I was starting to gain weight again. I just looked and felt so much lighter. And your podcast is all about confidence through health, right? And there was a shifting moment when I did this mental detox exercise at that program where they walk you through self-limiting beliefs. And then you identify that self-limiting belief and you ask, is this true? And my self-limiting belief was, I'm going to die from cancer.
Right.
But then when I asked myself, is this true? I realized I don't know, truly. That's one outcome, right? But
Sure.
there's a million outcomes that could be
Yep.
I heal from cancer.
Yeah.
I just didn't quite know how to get there yet. And so that was really the pivotal moment when I realized I still have a shake at this
Mhm.
and I'm feeling better. I started kind of using myself as an experiment and collecting data. And the data was saying, like, this is working. You're feeling better. Your pain's gone. I had a tumor pressing up against my spine. So it was giving me back pain. And,
Mhm.
you know, cancer pain is unique in that it's tied deeply into trauma. So
Right.
after you go through cancer, like any my pinky toe will start
Yeah.
hurting. My brain goes straight to like my cancer's back, I'm gonna die. Like anything
Sure.
unexplained.
Yeah.
And because my cancer was in my chest and it impacted my lungs, I had 6 tumors in my lungs when it spread to stage 4. Every time I get a cold and a cough, I go into a
Oh,
week
I'm
long trauma
sure.
response. And I just have
Yeah.
to like settle down, meditate, stay grounded, remind myself this is just a cold, it's not the
Right.
cancer.
Right.
But that trauma, lives deep in your body. You can't use mental gymnastics to get out of it. So,
Right.
um, but yeah, the turning point was when I in, invested time and energy into something I didn't quite believe, and it started working.
Yeah.
Within 6 months, I was basically cancer free. I
Wow.
returned home after that 6 weeks of that program and was very diligent about the protocols. And it was raw vegan. It was a lot of mental and emotional work,
Right.
working through your trauma, fixing relationships, learning how to set boundaries,
Yeah.
prioritizing sleep and stress management, um, looking at all the different aspects of healing that support healing, all the
Right.
aspects of life that support healing, and really focusing on that. That's really a root cause approach.
Yeah.
And the alternative complementary approach is like running a marathon versus the Western medical approach, which I completely believe is very effective. And I would never recommend someone don't do it. That's more like a shotgun 100-meter dash, right? You're
Right.
just going
Yep.
straight for the cancer cells to destroy the tumor
Right.
and that disease, but it doesn't address the underlying
Right.
issue, right? And so when I started understanding how my nervous system works and adopting a spiritual practice and working with these self-limiting beliefs and basically changing every aspect of my life through
Yeah.
what is known as a lifestyle medicine
Mhm.
approach, working with integrative oncologists and MDs who have a broad understanding of both Western and Eastern medicine. And they can kind of help you navigate when it's appropriate
Right.
to lean into Western medicine versus let's try something before we go into this
Mhm.
treatment, which could have, long-term debilitating effects. And so it was like a shift in my beliefs that really pushed me into a different direction and allowed me to heal. And
Yeah.
I'm very certain that if I'd stayed only in that, conventional system from the beginning and just kept going down that path, while I wasn't changing anything about my life,
Mhm.
I would have just continued to wither away treatment after
Right.
treatment. I
Yeah.
can't say that with certainty, but that's the direction I was going.
Right. Well, and you mentioned root cause, and that's one of the biggest pieces of you know the current healthcare system is okay. Let's knock your symptoms out of the way.
Yeah,
And when we do that, okay, we're going to feel better, and that for some people that's an immediate, absolute need, and it's valid, right? Let's do that. But like you said, we can't forget to go back and then go, okay, wait, what got me here?
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Like, what is it in? And I love the way you tied in trauma and cancer, and like because there's it's not the only thing, but there's so many things that link trauma and cancer together, and trauma and other diseases together. And when we don't, when I was growing up, as a guy, you're taught like, okay, stuff it, just stuff it.
yeah.
Don't talk
Men
about
don't
it, just stuff
cry.
it. Right? Men don't cry, just stuff those feelings down.
You're tough. You're
And then
strong. Yeah,
yeah, and then now you've got like, yeah, your back hurts, your leg hurts, and all these things. And a lot of times it's trauma that's showing up and you
yeah,
never dealt with it. And
hmm
and you go to the doctor and the doctor doesn't a traditional Western medicine doctor is not going to know how to deal with that in that way.
They're not trained in that.
Right.
You have to look at where they get their training and it's really grounded in FDA approved
Mhm.
treatments, right? So they're experts in their field. And I think it's
Sure.
important to contextualize oncology and put it in its place as here's one arrow in the healing quiver
Mhm.
that is very effective and should be a major part of your healing plan from a physical point of view. And there's also all these other things you can do to
Right.
support healing. Unfortunately, the message around cancer is often this is genetic. There's nothing you could have done to prevent this. And there's nothing you can do now except take my $1 million, treatment or
Yeah.
this chemotherapy or,
Right.
and that's a whole different conversation about, kind of conflict of interest and
Mhm.
how the Western medical system operates on a for-profit model. That's a totally different conversation, but it's important to look at, who's making money off this stuff and what's their
Right.
interest and intentions and putting it in that appropriate place, right?
Right.
But then you can explore all these other modalities and approaches and therapies and lifestyle changes
Yeah.
that not only support healing and increase your chance of survival, but also just make your life much better.
Sure.
Reduce your symptoms, give you a sense of agency and confidence that you can heal.
Yeah.
Because when you're disempowered and told by your doctor that there's nothing you can do, go back to your lifestyle. My oncologist at one point said, you can go back to your lifestyle.
Yeah.
Found that interesting. I was like, you never asked me what my lifestyle was like. What if I was drinking 6 beers a day, smoking a pack of cigarettes, eating Big Macs, 3 meals a day, like sleeping for 2 hours a night?
Yeah.
Because I'm working 90-hour weeks, which was kind of like what I was doing, to be honest. I wasn't smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, but not taking great care of myself.
Sure.
So the other opposite message, and this is really dominant in the alternative kind of complementary health spaces, actually you have a lot of power. You actually have a lot of agency. There's a lot you can do to support healing.
Right.
That empowering message, when people start to adopt it and believe it, I think that's when there will be a major shift.
Yeah.
In their healing process and their relationship with healing and health and cancer.
Yeah.
Right. You mentioned in a previous podcast that, these chronic illnesses take root in your 20s.
Right.
Right. They kind of get their beginning early before they're symptomatic, right? When you're eating whatever you want, you feel fine. You can
You're invincible.
drink 8 beers and then wake up at 6 a.m. and run it off. Go for an 8-mile run, which is what I would do. I'd have a hangover. I'd go to the gym, go rock climbing, or go for a long run. And I got away with that for a long time. But I was creating an environment, like an ecosystem in my body, which was conducive to disease, right? And so then there are genetic factors that come into play. And maybe I have some genetic predisposition to lymphoma, which was my diagnosis. But also I can look back and see, well, I wasn't sleeping enough. I was constantly running businesses in high stress work environments because of my undealt with trauma around my self-worth. And, I sought that out in professional success. I was drinking too much. I was just hard on my body, and I hadn't really dealt with my trauma in a way that would allow my nervous system to kind of settle down. I was constantly in a state of fight or flight for years. Unconsciously, but my body felt it. Right. So all of a sudden, I've never been sick. I've never really had a serious injury, and I've been very active doing all kinds of risky sports my whole life. Boom, out of the blue, I get cancer. I'm like, why me? What? I thought I was living pretty healthy.
Yeah.
So these diseases are a product of decades of, paper cut moment.
Right.
Small choices around, your diet and habits around your lifestyle that create an environment where cancer can, take root.
Right. So It's interesting that, one of the things you said is as far as when you first ventured into the alternative holistic side in addressing the self-limiting beliefs.
Mhm.
But I would say that it sounds like prior to your diagnosis, like if somebody said, "Do you have any self-limiting beliefs?" You would have said, like, "No, I no." Like,
Yeah, what's
because it
that?
sounds like
What's
you
that
were
mean?
totally successful in so many different areas, right? And
Yeah,
so it's interesting.
why would I question and
Yeah,
start digging deep when everything's going well? And
right,
that's why people don't look deep and deal with their trauma because they're like, well, my life's good. I'm
right.
stable. I have a wife, I have friends, I have, a life. But they haven't had this crisis that's really like the wake up call, right? This
Yeah,
this this moment where your body tells you very clearly there's deep lack of alignment,
yeah,
right? And you need to deal with this. Otherwise, you're not going to make it. And that's kind of where I got. There were signs and symptoms for a long time. Like my body was telling me for a long time. I just had no relationship with my body and listening to my body. I just suppressed all that
right.
stuff. I
Yeah,
was chronically fatigued, but I would just get up and like live on adrenaline and coffee and hard exercise to overcome that. And
right.
I started getting these like rashes on my skin that I thought was like originally like maybe a fungal thing, but they just wouldn't go away no matter what.
Yeah,
And I later realized that was toxic burden on my liver and toxins trying to escape. I just
yeah,
didn't know what I was even looking for. I didn't know what to pay attention to.
yeah,
After cancer and when I started delving into the alternative complementary space, having a deep relationship and learning to listen to your body and see symptoms and emotions and as information
yeah.
and learning to trust your gut,
Hmm.
that's when I was able to finally get really dialed into paying attention very carefully to what I was doing and what was the impact it was having,
Right.
and sometimes you can see very clearly the results of something,
Yeah,
but sometimes it's not so clear. And it's more just like a gut feeling like, is this healthy? Does this feel healthy? Right? Do I
right.
believe in this, that this is healing? Is this meal healing or is it not? We know that
Yeah,
deep down. Each
yeah.
person knows what diet is right for them,
Right.
or at least they can figure it out by experimentation. And so, yeah, learning to trust your body and actually trust your gut and your instinct, and is there's so much intelligence in our bodies
Oh yeah.
that we're not even aware of. Like we have you know, a woman has the capacity to create a human being in her
Right.
womb
Yep.
without any thought, without
Yep.
instructing it. It just happens, right? So
Yeah.
we are ostensibly the most complex organism on planet, and we can just create one in ourselves without
Right.
even thinking about it. Like there's something, I
Yep.
mean, that's
Yep.
unfathomable amount of
Yeah.
intelligence. So to think that my body doesn't have the intelligence to heal,
Right.
you're I think you're not giving yourself enough credit.
Yeah.
We're not giving our bodies enough credit on the internal intelligence it has, and it will tell you what's working and what's not working once you
Yeah.
start listening and paying
Yeah.
attention.
Well, and I agree with you. I think the signs are a lot earlier than anybody realizes in the moment, right? It's not until after the thing happens that you look back and hindsight's 2020. You go, oh yeah, that makes sense that I had this issue or that issue, and I thought it was nothing, and so I didn't do anything about it. And
Yeah,
those little issues that happen maybe a year apart at first, and then now they're like
yeah,
a month apart, and then they're
yeah,
okay. Now I need
yeah.
to go see somebody because this is starting to become an issue. Um, and but that I totally agree with you. Like one of the biggest things that I try to as a proponent of when somebody sees traditional medicine, yeah, like they have their role, they have their place. But if you're not asking questions, why is this the only treatment? Why is this the only thing? Why do you not want me to go to anybody else?
Hmm.
Right? Like
Yeah,
find out why, because if it's just an ego thing, that's a problem. Because like I understand that, and I know a lot of doctors, right? And doctors, they want to be right. They want to help you. They're not, most of them are not in it just to make money and who cares if you live or
no,
die,
no, of
right? They want to genuinely see you get better. But if there's
course.
an ego piece of it's my way or the highway, that's something to then question and go like, okay, do I have the right person who's a part of my team who's saying, I want you to win with your health, no matter which way it is,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Holistic medicine used to be a major component of our healthcare
mhm.
system, in the early 19th century, or
Yep.
excuse me, early 20th century. And there's a whole history of the FDA and how we transitioned and moved away from that towards a more disease-focused
Right.
approach, which is an interesting history and
Yeah.
worth into. Um, so it's not like it was never part of our conscious, or
Right.
that wisdom has been there for thousands of years.
Oh, yeah.
And Western science is miraculous. The innovation and what they're doing now is amazing.
Yep.
Uh, and it's one arrow in your healing quiver, right?
Right. Right.
So I think the most important thing someone could do is have a little faith that maybe they don't know what they don't know. Maybe there's
Yep.
something out there that they don't know,
Yeah.
right? It could heal them.
Right.
And the only way to find out is to take that leap of faith and start experimenting, using your body as an
Yep.
experiment. Trying out, okay, I changed my diet to whole food plant-based.
Mhm.
Do I feel better? Do I feel like this is healing? Well,
Yeah.
if your body says yes, then you'll know.
Right.
Okay, try a new supplement routine. You'll know innately, like, is this healing? You know, and a lot of it's based on the gut, and a lot of it's based on doing your research and
Right.
figuring out if there's evidence and some reason to back it. And if you're doing something without evidence base behind it, like understanding that,
Yeah.
it's not like you can't do those things, but
Sure.
because there's not a ton of research that's been done that would connect trauma to cancer, right? But
Right.
you can kind of walk backwards and see like how the nervous system operates. And okay,
Right.
so cancer is a disease of the immune system, right? Because it happens when your immune system is unable to identify and destroy cells that are reproducing
Right.
unnaturally.
Yep.
Okay, well, trauma creates this consistent fight or flight response, which turns on certain systems in our bodies and turns off others, which include
Right.
our immune system and our digestive system. And if your immune system's turned off for long enough due to this trauma that you haven't dealt with, it just keeps arising consistently, getting triggered over and over and over again. Eventually, some type of disease
Yeah.
will start impacting you and arising
Yep.
and take root.
Yep. And so you've taken your journey and are now helping other people with their journeys, correct?
Correct. Yep.
And so when did that light bulb go off that like, okay, this is what I need to do?
It was the realization that my experience is not unique.
Yeah.
My experience of feeling overwhelmed, unsupported, not having guidance, having this just enormous ocean of information with no one I trusted to guide me through it and say,
Mhm.
this is good information about healing. This is
Right.
not so good, right? And I also started digging and doing some research into the support services and financial aid available for cancer patients, and it's a vast, vast underground network of
Oh, wow.
nonprofits that are all operating, but it's very fragmented.
Mhm.
And it's kind of hard to figure out A, that it even exists and what's
Yeah.
out there, what's available, and then B, how to find it and activate it.
Right.
So I also recognized how logistically challenging cancer is, how tough it is emotionally,
Yeah.
how much shame there is when you get a cancer diagnosis, because our
Mhm.
society values productivity so much that and all of a sudden you're just kind of stuck on couch island watching TV
Mhm.
all day because it's the only thing you can do.
Yeah.
You lose that value of productivity and contribution to society, and you kind of tend to isolate, and it's a very lonely experience.
Right.
So as I was recognizing this as a universal experience, then I asked, what why isn't anyone doing anything about this?
Right. Yeah.
Why does my social worker not know there's thousands of grants that I could have applied to?
Oh, wow.
And there's an organization that provides free house cleaning once a month while you're going through treatment. There's organizations that will come and do home maintenance for you, that will deliver meals.
Yeah.
There's grants that cover copays. There's grants for just daily living expenses. They don't even require you to use it for a copay. They just write you a check for, $3,000-$4,000, and you can do with it what you need.
Yeah.
There's a vast amount of money and resources and support out there, and it seems like no one totally understood the landscape of support.
Right.
Um, what a cancer patient needs when they get diagnosed is someone to sit down with them and say, okay, here's how this is going to go, right?
Yeah.
And there's these kind of 6 pillars that you need
Mhm.
to focus on, because these are all very impactful and important for your healing process. And those include, your medical and your treatment plan,
Right.
your emotional and your mental health, your spiritual practice and your connection with, the divine, and
Right.
however you want to, have your relationship with that, your financial stability, the
Mhm.
ability to pay your bills and pay your rent so you don't get kicked out of
Right.
your home, and you can afford groceries and gas, and you're not stuck in financial toxicity, which is a huge
Right.
problem in itself. The practical logistical piece, and then
Mhm.
finally the community and social, support system. Those
Right.
6 areas are all very important to healing cancer.
Yeah.
If there's a lack of stability in any of those, it creates a crack in the foundation, and it's really hard to build upon
Right.
any aspects.
Right. Well, and like you said, it's cancer thrives when you're in constant fight or flight,
Yeah.
and you get a diagnosis, and I would imagine you're immediately thrown even to a higher level of fight for my life,
Oh my gosh.
and you just
Yes.
don't know what to do. And I'm sure there's times where you just want to flee everything, right? And just like just screw it. I'm just going to go on a vacation somewhere and forget everything for a week. Which I'm sure is not possible, but it's, a temptation to be like, if I got to deal with this, I'm out. Um, and so, yeah, instability in any one of those 6 areas, just especially financial, just throws it even more.
Yeah. If it, let's look at the financial piece just as an example. If you are constantly stressed about how you're going to afford the treatment,
Mhm.
can you afford a treatment that might save my life that I don't know about or I can't pay for because I don't have enough money?
Right,
Can I pay my rent? Am I going to lose my house? I
right,
have a lot of clients who come to me and saying, I don't know how I'm going to pay my mortgage. I might lose my home. This kind of chronic stress about money, I call financial toxicity.
mhm,
And it just suppresses your immune system.
yeah,
Chronic. So if you aren't able to gain some type of financial stability while you're dealing with cancer, it's going to really hamper healing and have an
yeah,
impact on healing. If you're constantly dealing with fear from an emotional kind of mental support space,
mhm,
and you're unable to, deal with stress, you don't have the tools, you don't understand what it is and kind of how the mind works, and
right,
you don't have a meditation or some type of grounding practice, then you're going to be stuck in, mental worry and fear, and you're not going to be able to make clear decisions about
right,
any aspect of your life or your healing.
yeah,
It goes the same for all of these different pillars. So it's so important that patients realize that we tend to say cancer is just a physical disease that we need to heal.
mhm,
So let's just destroy the cancer cells, which Western medicine is extremely good at.
right,
And if you step out a little bit, you can see that this has been kind of percolating for a long time.
right,
And what I realized is all of the metrics that I was using to gauge health before I got cancer were just off. They weren't, they weren't right.
yeah,
I was like, am I financially successful? Do I look, good?
right,
Do I have how many cancer patients have a 6 pack when they get
right,
diagnosed? Like
yeah,
I was like, what? How I'm so active. But the problem was I was using the wrong metrics to
Right.
gauge health and success, and I wasn't looking at stress. I didn't even understand it enough to understand stress and trauma and its relationship to health, or how my nervous system worked,
Yeah.
how important sleep is, and nutrition, and um, community support, and all of these different components
Mhm.
are key aspects of healing.
Yeah.
You could
And
be eating the healthiest salads every single
right.
night, the most optimized nutrition for your body, if you could figure that
Yeah.
out. But if you're hating every moment of it and resisting
Mhm.
it, and you don't actually think it's helping, well, it's not helping because
Yeah.
you're stressed out. Your digestive system isn't able to even absorb the nutrients,
Right. Right.
and the placebo effect is extremely powerful. So if you believe something's working, it probably is, even if it's
Yeah.
not working at the mechanism that it should be working. Well, placebo is so powerful that it will have a positive impact on your healing,
Right.
you know?
Well, and it's yeah, your body's ability to heal itself. You touched on this earlier. It's massive. If we give it the tools, and you've talked about all those tools, but another in a big one is the simple belief.
Hmm.
Do I believe I can do these things, right?
Yeah.
And this is whether it's cancer or just if you're battling with obesity or you're battling with whatever. It's like if you're sitting there going like, you know what, there's no way I can lose this 40 pounds. I know I need to lose it. The doctor tells me every time I go to see him, but there's no way I'm ever going to lose this 40 pounds. Guess what? You're never going to lose the 40 pounds.
Yeah,
But it's not because you could try everything in the world, but you're probably not going to lose it because your brain says, I can't lose it. You know?
exactly. And that's what's such a tragic element of prognoses. When a doctor says you have 6 months to live, most patients live about whatever their doctor tells them they're going
Right.
to live. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's some of it has to do with placebo effect, but a lot of it, there's a combination of like your beliefs and your emotions and how they impact your actions and your decisions. And that
Yeah.
all comes together to, well, if you're preparing for your death in 6 months, you're preparing for your death in 6 months. And every aspect of your life is going to be, impacted by that belief,
Right. Right.
you know?
And we all have heard stories of this person goes in and gets this horrible diagnosis and goes back 6 months later and everything's gone, and it's like, oh, what'd they do? Well, they did a lot of the things you're talking about as far as like their belief system. They managed everything they could and did it well, right? It wasn't it rarely is it one thing by itself, Western medicine, or oh, I just started sleeping better, or I just right. It's the
Yeah.
combination of everything. And and it's funny because I had this thought earlier today that like how many times do we say I'm too busy to do X, Y, or Z, right? I'm just my day's too busy. I don't have time for this or for that. But if you get in a car wreck, or and what actually spurred my thought was that I saw a, a big branch off a tree that had fallen. We've got a windstorm going on today, and and I saw that and I was like, that person that has out of the blue a big branch falls from a tree, falls in their car. Are they too busy to deal with that? They're just going to keep going with their day? No, they're going to stop everything and deal with
Deal
that,
with that.
right? And everything else is going to be on hold. I call the boss, I can't come in, blah, 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 whatever, right? And so when we think we're too busy, oftentimes we're not. We just don't understand how to prioritize and you said it earlier, we don't listen to our body to prioritize, hey, my body's telling me this. This is the most important thing. I've got to listen to it.
Right. Exactly. A really good analogy for this is, imagine you're a single parent working to support kids,
Mm-hmm.
and you're just going to work, and when you get home from work, you're preparing dinner and you're taking your kids to this and that, and
Right.
then you're preparing to get them to bed, and you don't have time to do laundry, so you just kind of throw some dirty clothes in the hamper and hang some stuff up over a chair and go to bed.
Right.
Right? You didn't have time to do the dishes, you'll do them in the morning. Wake up in the morning, it's just you're packed to the gills with stuff, getting your kids off to school, and then you have to go to work, and you don't have time for the
Right.
dishes or the laundry or to clean up the home. And so it's starting to accumulate chaos and clutter and dirt. And
Yeah.
and imagine this just keeps going, right? until your whole house is just a mess, a
Yeah.
disaster, and you don't have the time or the resources, the energy to clean it up,
Mhm.
to allow your home to function as it should, as a,
Right.
home. Well, the same can be said for these like decades of poor, choices that aren't aligned with health.
Right.
It's just a slow build,
Yeah.
slow build. It hits a critical point where your immune system shuts down, right? And then
Yeah.
some type of disease arises. But
Yep.
when you actively start working at cleaning house, you clean up your diet, right? That was a mess. You
Mhm.
clean up your sleep and you prioritize sleep. You clean up your, your mental health and your emotional stuff and your trauma. That's cleaning up a mess.
Right.
And you unburden your body from all these sources of toxins, both environmental and internal and emotional,
Right.
and give it a chance to actually operate in an optimal way, right?
Yep.
You stop creating dumpster fires,
Right.
every time you eat a meal, and you actually start doing things that are conducive to healing, and your body
Right.
will begin to heal.
Yeah. And you don't have to tell, like you said earlier with the I love to that, a female doesn't have to even think about, and can become pregnant. I mean, the timing's got to be right from that standpoint, but they're not thinking, do this right now, like internally, right? Like they're not thinking those things,
No.
and a baby's created. And it's the same thing with with changing our health. We don't have to think, okay, clean my liver. Okay, kidneys start working better, or we don't
Yep.
have to think those things. We just have to provide the right the blueprint's there. We just got to provide the right things to activate it, and
Yep.
have get the foundation set, and then start building from there. And it knows how to do it if we take all those other things that are toxic out of the way.
Yeah. We have to start looking at toxins not just from like this is a chemical toxin,
Mhm.
but we have emotional toxins. Like we
Right.
have toxins in our food. We
Right.
have, of course, we have toxins in our environment, like cleaning products and chemical scented wall plugins and candles,
Right.
and what are we kind of laundry detergent are we using?
Yeah.
All these things create environmental toxins, but there's other toxins. There's what we eat. Are we watching the news? Are we
Right.
consuming information that's creating kind of a baseline of stress and anxiety?
Yeah.
Um, are we surrounded by people who are loving and supportive,
Yeah.
or are we letting people in who are creating stress and shame and there's all these different sources of toxins, and in Buddhist philosophy they call it all these different types of consumption.
Yeah.
They don't limit consumption to this food. They talk about consuming all these different elements. Basically anything that comes into your system is
Right.
considered potential for healing
Yeah.
or not healing.
Right. And the big thing is that in the to connect everything is that once you start your body's healing journey, right? I would imagine that once you started seeing, okay, my symptoms are starting to go away, I'm starting to feel better, that the confidence in not just your daily life, but the confidence in I can beat this
Hmm.
started to grow, right? And like,
Yeah, it's like a snowball effect,
yeah.
right? I just start getting these little, it's a feedback loop, right?
Mhm.
Talk about feedback loops a lot in like health and fitness.
Yeah.
It's a feedback loop. You start seeing results of actions you're taking, and it builds a little more faith. Oh, that
Yeah.
worked. I had no idea that would work. Let
Right.
me try something new. Let me try something over here and this and that. And you just start experimenting with all these
Mhm.
different healing modalities and approaches and therapies and lifestyle changes.
Yeah.
And eventually, I always like to say, like every individual has their unique healing recipe,
Right.
all these different factors. Every body is different. Every
Yep.
person is very unique. And you have to just figure out what that recipe is. And once
Yeah.
you do, your body can self-heal.
Right.
Of course, that's not universal, right? Some people have certain types of cancers that are very aggressive, and we haven't figured out a way to stop them once they,
Right.
start growing,
Right.
even with all the alternative and complementary,
Sure.
healing that add to the picture.
Right.
But there is a lot you can do, and once you start seeing the results, you start gaining that confidence. You start
Yeah.
realizing, oh, I do have agency in my healing. I can
Yeah.
impact this, and that just it creates a snowball effect. And I just went all in.
Mhm.
I haven't had a PET scan since
Yeah.
because I trust my body will let me know when
Right.
something's off, right? I feel
Yeah.
healthy, I feel strong, I feel good mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. My body will let me know when something's off and I will pay attention to it. If I start
Right.
getting chest pain or like start feeling lightheaded or I start getting a night sweat, I'm not going to let that go for a single day before I start looking into it and
Right.
investigating it.
Right.
Long after I went into remission, I also have the confidence that if cancer, for whatever reason, comes back, I know exactly what I need to do now to
Right.
heal. It worked
Right.
once. Why wouldn't it work again?
Right.
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 And that might include conventional medicine. It might not. I would generally recommend folks, if they're stable and it's not life threatening, to see what they can do to maybe hedge against cancer before you go into some treatment that could cause lifetime debilitating,
Right.
impacts like chemotherapy and, surgeries and radiation. They all have the potential to, create a disability that
Sure.
never goes away.
Right. Right. Um, well, and I mean, they're typically described as nasty treatments. They're not things that are and it completely different. But I tore my PCL years ago, and I had recently gone into my physical therapist because my other leg was compensating too much, and so I was seeing some issues from it. And we were talking about that, and I said, I know it's all compensation. She goes, yep. I said, I know that, the quick and easy fix is just go get the PCL fixed because I never did have surgery on it. And she looked at me and was like, no, that's not an option. I was like, I know, I don't want to get cut on because who knows what else they could mess up if they, not
Yeah.
intentionally, but there's always things that can go wrong. And there's a reason why you sign all those waivers,
Yeah.
beforehand,
Yeah.
because it's happened to somebody and there's statistics for a reason. Um, so yeah, there's always, but I like the way you put it, though, because there's the way it's if it's life threatening, if it's not, and you have time, why not use that time to try and figure out an all encompassing game plan?
Right.
If it's life threatening, get it taken care of as quick as possible, get
Of
the surgery,
course.
get the
Yeah.
whatever it is. Um, but if you've got time, like, start digging into all those other things, and the busyness of your life needs to go away because this is your top priority.
Yeah. And talk to your oncologist. They'll have a pretty good idea of how quickly the tumor is growing
Right.
and how much time you have where your body will remain stable, right? They
Right.
know
Yeah.
there's so much data on tumor growth and all the different
Right.
types of cancers and subtypes that they know like how quickly these things grow. And
Yeah.
so you can get an idea from your oncologist of, is this really urgent? Do I need to like go into chemo? Like when they discovered my 7-inch tumor, chemo is life and death. They're like, we need to get
Yeah.
that tumor shrunk.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're gonna plug up, it's gonna block some major artery. You're gonna have a heart attack.
Right. Right.
You know,
Yeah.
it wasn't, and that's how cancer typically, causes us to die is that it just starts pressing against things and
Right.
creating inflammation and causing major functions in our body to shut down.
Yeah.
And so in my case, I had to go in and get some heavy duty chemo right off the bat. And that shrunk that tumor down to a fraction of the size it was, but it didn't
Right.
completely get rid of every cancer cell. So
Yeah.
it was starting to grow again. And like 7 or 8 months later, when I got another PET scan, I discovered it had spread to my lungs and my liver. That's when it
Mm.
turned into stage 4.
Yeah.
And at that point, it, I was, it was just another, another terrible, scary piece of information that I was
Sure.
getting. So I thought I was out of the woods a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
My body was still giving me signs that I had cancer. I just
Mhm.
wasn't paying attention to them. You
Right.
know, I didn't want to accept the fact that the cancer was growing again, but I was getting signs from my body, subtle shifts in my energy and my, you know, um, just different sensations in the body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for someone who you mentioned earlier that 50% of people will get cancer in the US. Um and that statistic's probably going to continue to grow and become more and more popular as far as uh during your lifetime.
Yeah.
Like, So for someone who is either starting to go through this, going through this, or knows somebody going through this, which is pretty much everybody out there,
Yeah,
um, how can they what explain Evolvv Health and how they can get in touch and find the information that can help them navigate this?
sure. So I would say what Evolvv Health does is we provide cancer patients with a roadmap.
Mhm.
We show you all of your options, right? And we show you kind of how all these pieces fit into a more comprehensive healing strategy.
Right.
And then we start connecting you with those resources. And so if you have cancer, if you have a family member with cancer, you want to get them help, you can go onto my website. I have a resources page with 7 or 8 detailed guides and ebooks I've written,
Yeah.
basically telling everybody everything I do, for
Right.
free. There's
Right.
nothing I do that I haven't published
Yeah.
on my blog or in these ebooks. I have a 450-page book called The Whole Healing Playbook,
Mhm.
which walks through everything we've been talking about today, all the different aspects of healing
Yeah.
and basically every option you have in terms of alternative and holistic, and how that can be used to complement your conventional plan to like maximize your chance of survival and
Yeah.
really improve your quality of life.
Mhm.
I think that's a really great place to start is check out some of those free guides and
Yeah.
information. And some folks want more one-on-one support.
Mhm.
I do resource navigation, so I'll help folks find grants and apply for them. I do, emotional and stress management and mindfulness coaching. I'm a certified, mindfulness teacher.
Yeah.
I help folks with integrative care planning, so creating this kind of treatment plan
Right.
that looks at all the different pieces and helps you put them together, including lifestyle changes and
Mhm.
alternative therapies and protocols. Um, and a big part of what we do is help folks with disability benefits because a lot of
Mhm.
cancer patients, like me, like I was
Right.
healthy, I was strong. I didn't think about myself as being disabled, even if after I got cancer and went through chemotherapy, I was like, I can still like walk around, and I continued working.
Right.
I just continued grinding on my business the whole time.
Yeah.
But essentially, when you're diagnosed with cancer, the vast majority of people will fall into ADA's qualification as being disabled,
Mhm.
right? And so, you know, if you have chronic fatigue and you can't think straight because you have, you know, chemo brain,
Right.
considered disabled by,
Yeah.
the US
Right.
government
Yeah.
and eligible for disability benefits if that those symptoms prevent you from going back and functioning at work. If you can't
Right.
stand long enough to even shave or make your bed and you were working as a construction worker, well, you're not going to be able
Right.
to go
You're
back to
not
your
gonna be
job.
able to, yeah.
But a lot of people
Okay.
just push through it because they're resistant to becoming someone who doesn't contribute to society and losing their identity, because it's a
Right.
very identity collapsing experience. Or they just don't know that they're disabled. I didn't even know I was disabled. I had no
Yeah.
idea I was eligible for disability benefits until it was too late, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and so a lot of like the way I get in touch with folks right now is through a lot of advertisements on like Facebook and Google, which basically tells people, hey, if you have cancer and you lost your job, consider replacing that lost income with disability benefits.
Right.
And we help folks apply for disability and access disability, which can be absolutely life changing for people.
Oh,
I had a
sure.
client who couldn't pay for gas and groceries
Oh,
before
wow.
she got disability.
Yeah.
And the thing about disability is they look back and they determine the date that you were disabled. So if it takes a year and a half to get approved, well, they're going to look back and say it was 18 months ago that you became disabled, and they'll write you a check for 25, 30 grand
Oh,
called the
wow.
back pay check.
Right.
It can be life changing, life saving money
Absolutely.
for a lot of folks.
Absolutely.
So, this particular woman is on the other side, and, we stay in touch, and she's, it made such a huge impact on her life. It totally helped her overcome this financial toxicity and constant stress. I'm like, she had already taken 2 mortgages out on her home. I'm going to lose my
Oh, wow.
house.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she's doing great now.
That's awesome. Um,
Yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, it's to everybody that I've got a friend who's got a family member going through a health crisis, and just seeing the posts on Facebook and not having guidance and not having, and you can tell there's not, and it's like they're doing everything they can think of, right? Um, but like you said, I didn't know that there were these like underground network of things available for people. So I applaud you for being able to not just go through everything you went through, but then be able to say, okay, now we've got to make this out there for people so that they know and they can get help. And
Yeah.
I commend you for that.
I wrote one guide called, the top 10 cancer funding organizations that every cancer patient needs to know.
Yeah.
These are 10 large nonprofits, like national level nonprofits, and collectively they offer over 450 grants just in these 10 organizations.
Wow.
And I would say that's the place to start. Get the
Yeah.
guide, figure out what these organizations are, and call them. And you can talk to a grant specialist, and they'll say, okay, we have all these grants open right now. Here's the one you qualify for, and you're eligible,
Sure.
and it's open. So then they'll help you apply. Right?
Yeah.
Call the next grant organization and do the same
Right.
thing. Apply to as many as you can. Enlist family members and friends to help. I've had clients who have, grant application parties where they invite 10 people over in the afternoon, buy some pizza, and they all make like 100 phone calls.
Right.
And find grants that they're, that they're eligible for. I mean, it's in the tens of thousands of dollars that cancer patients could access just by applying for grants alone.
Right.
Not to mention disability benefits on top of, free house cleaning, free rides to treatments. If you have to travel, there's organizations that will pay for your hotel and your plane ticket while you live in another city getting treatments. The support system is vast.
Yeah.
You just have to know where to look. And so a lot of the resources I've created kind of show people exactly where to look and how to activate those resources.
Right. That's awesome. Well, Pete, I want to thank you so much for being a guest. It's been great. I'm going to link Evolvv Health into show notes so people can get there quickly and easily. And if there any last thing that like you would say to somebody who's, and this may not be person that, but maybe they're listening to this and then a year from now they get that cancer diagnosis, right? Like what's that thing that happens at that initial like meeting that maybe they need to know to whether find comfort or know that there's a future ahead?
Sure. Remember that every person has an opportunity to heal from this disease. And it's a matter of discovering what your unique recipe is.
Yeah.
And that takes time and research and energy and experimentation and admitting to yourself that you don't know, that there might be some way out there that you just haven't seen or understood or have been exposed to yet. So, remember that, and don't get stuck in this self-limiting belief that I'm going to die from this, because that's just not true, right? Necessarily. There's a way to heal for everybody, I truly believe, and it's just a matter of figuring out what that looks like.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Pete, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. I appreciate the conversation.
Thanks for checking out the Confidence Through Health podcast. Please subscribe, post a review, share this episode with those you love who need a little extra help with their health journey. Visit allinhealthandwellness.com to learn more about the coaching programs that I provide. All episodes are produced by the Social Media Cowboys, your source for all online marketing needs. Go to socialmediacowboys.com for more information.